What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 431 of Opinions May Vary. I'm your host, JR. I am my co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
Hello. It's been a while, but we're gonna make it worth it. It's gonna be fun because joining us this week for his first full appearance, not just not featuring this guy and also a bunch of others for a little segment. First full appearance, which I can't believe, since I believe June of 2019, if I'm looking at our website correctly. Wow. Is Mr. Brett Kelley.
Hey, yo.
Brett, thank you. What happened? What?
Nope. Just making it awkward right off the bat. No problem.
Nailed it.
Yeah, because it's been so long. I have a lot of catching up to do. So awkward silences aplenty. But no, I'm happy to be here, you guys. It's Brett, a joy to hear your voices.
You last appeared on 415, which was the perfect haunted house, where we talked with you and Will and Jess and Ashley and John, and there were a bunch of haunted house. It was during our spooky sods back in 2020. And before that, at least according to the website, you were in Starwell, so those happened. And then 378 was when we talked about things that we were digging on YouTube back in June of 2019, which is pretty bonkers. Pretty bonkers, considering there was a time when Brett was either on every single week or every other week for months.
Hey, yeah, I'm I think I said it last time too, where I'm just thrilled because you guys, once again, you guys have been killing it. You've been getting some killer guests and been talking about some awesome stuff that I love listening to, and yeah, so I'm stoked, happy to be on the sidelines cheering my boys on.
Hey, thanks, man. You've always been so good to us. So we're chatting. We're gonna talk about a couple things today, kind of like the old school thing. Couple topics that we're gonna touch on. Nothing crazy. Maybe some hot takes, some varying opinions. Who knows? I don't know. But Brett, either way, it is very good to have you. I hope you had a wonderful 4th. I hope everyone listening had a wonderful 4th. Safe and all that. I just read about the hockey player who died because he got hit with fireworks in his chest. Jeez. That happened.
Whoa! I did not hear that.
Yeah, there's a hockey player, and it was first reported that he fell and died, but now it's being reported. Autopsy revealed that he died of chest trauma from an errant fireworks blast and not a fall, as authorities previously reported, according to SportsCenter. Anyways, that's not why people are listening. We're here to talk. Well, listen, we're going to talk about D&D first, because typically, historically, at least within our group of friends, D&D it kicks ass. It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. It's not. I can't even say it's new to our group because we've been doing it for 7 years.
Well, we have, haven't we?
Well, yeah. The difference is it's still relatively new to us because it's also been around for close to half a century by now.
Yeah.
It's a thing that was present in the 80s and 70s.
Yep.
And so to be we've been at this for a long time. It's yeah, but not 40 years.
Yeah. There are some people who have been playing this since first edition, and
yeah, since Red Booklet cover came out, didn't have any friends. They then were through the Satanic Panic and all that fun stuff.
Yeah,
right. Because there was a time when if you played D&D, that meant that you worship Satan. That was a thing.
Yep.
That was a real thing.
Yep, and there was a TV movie starring Tom Hanks that literally was about that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was this pre-Oscars Tom Hanks or
Yes, it's splash era Tom Hanks. Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. Everyone's got to start somewhere.
Bosom buddies Tom Hanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how I refer to him. There's been some. Go ahead, Alex.
No, I was just gonna say that's the oldest thing I remember was he was in a regular sitcom TV show of guys pretending to be women to go to school.
I have no idea.
Yeah, Bosom Buddies. Yeah, that was Tom Hanks.
Huh.
Yep.
It's crazy when you look back and think where people, all the famous movie stars got their start. A lot of it was from television shows that you've probably never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on it for a while. And then Then he's in Philadelphia, winning Oscars.
Yeah.
With the AIDS and all that stuff. By the way, you ever seen Philadelphia? God damn, that movie kicks ass.
Oh yeah, no, that's great movie.
So, D&D. This is a really confusing story, and like I remember when it first dropped, and like people were talking about it on Twitter, and trying to figure out exactly what was going on. It was one of those where I tried to read into it for like 30 seconds, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna need to close this, and someone's just gonna have to explain it to me. Because there's so many moving parts, and there's so many things with the same name that are different.
Yeah.
But let's talk about D&D.
I was hoping I could cover this better, but I've been fighting with my Wi-Fi for 3 days.
Yep.
And so I don't have all the notes I would like in front of me.
But I have a couple articles pulled up from that are like with some latest. So yeah, but hopefully that'll be helpful where necessary. But we'll see. Right? I guess we'll see where it goes.
So if we start in the beginning, Gary Gygax was like, "Let's produce a role-playing game because I like dragons and dungeons." And in order
not in that order though.
And the company that him and also some others created was called TSR. And TSR was the publisher of D&D for a very long time. Decades go by, they change up some of the rules, or they change up how the stats work, and they change up some of the storytelling. We get D&D, we get Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, their second edition, and then I'm not sure if third comes, or then Wizards of the Coast purchases D&D. But now there's new editions, so there's follow-up either rules, or there's different ways to calculate your stats. And there's also always ways to encourage people to play the games. So you could get like your little zine and be like, well, here's a campaign you could run. Here's a longer campaign. Here's just ideas for something to do with your characters. Puzzles, combat, new creatures, all these new things come out. So Wizards of the Coast has D&D, but they no longer need TSR, right? Are you guys with me?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
sort of. I'm almost there.
So they're like, well, we're publishing ourselves. We don't need the name TSR, and either they don't renew it, or they forget to renew it, or it just kind of slips by because they're busy making product. And as companies go, in order. Because you can't just make product for $0. Like, you have to make income. You have to earn money. So you want to make product that people want to buy. So I've read different things of how, like, well, there were guys who were in the old TSR, or one was the son of Gary Gygax. And they say, well, let's just bring back TSR. And they managed to buy the license, or copyright it for themselves because the copyright has expired. So now I believe that was 2011, where there's like, hey, we're TSR now. We have TSR. We're going to start making and publishing role-playing games. But they can't do D&D. But there are people from way back, from the 80s, 70s, who really enjoyed that era and that version of gameplay. And they're not as enthusiastic about 4th edition, 4.5, 5th edition, and they're seeing a way to like relive their youth, or maybe get new content in the old format.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at some point, that TSR, their copyright expires, and yet another company buys it so that they can now be TSR. And that was super recent. Like, I believe it was 2020 or 2019 or so. And
yep, 2020.
One of the examples I saw was like, well, go by like some of the owners. So one was TSR Elliott, I believe, and one was TSR Lanasa. I think. But
yes, TSR Games Elliott, TSR Games Lanasa. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So for a little while, Lanasa and Elliott they weren't really working together, but they both had the desire to produce the same type of games now. And if not produce, a lot of it was like republish. Or we had a Kickstarter for a thing that didn't work, and now we have a publisher that we can publish it with. But like, not all of them had brand new product. They're just reprinting old product. I might not be 100% on these, but one of the big issues was that the most recent newest company, between Lanasa and I believe that was the son of Gary Gygax, was caught saying some pretty bad shit. And a lot of people were like, hey man, I thought we were into fantasy role playing just to like not have to deal with this anymore. And I want to say it's odd, but it's looking at a lot of the comments coming around. There's a lot of people who just are not fans of any kind of cultural progress. I guess I'll put it.
Yeah.
So that's the point that I want to get to. If you guys have anything to add up to now or what I've left out so far.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I don't want to spoil anything if we're going to get further into things, but I know, like, the last article that I read, it basically says that things with Ernest Gygax Jr. apparently got so bad that TSR Games eventually has cut business ties with him, and as well as the second RPG publisher calling itself TSR. So apparently both companies have both been like, we're not associating with this person in any way, shape, or form. Spoiler alert. That's where I was at 6 days ago, and I have not done any deep dives since then.
One thing that I did want to touch on before we get like deep into the shit.
Yeah.
There's a good article that I read through from Gizmodo, which is from IO9. We talked with Rob Bricken.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the way they put it is they've put for them, which this is something you don't really hear about these days, especially in the era of everyone trying to like grind culture and everyone trying to create their carve out their section of the online world and making money off of stuff. Mm-hmm. It says in the article, for the most part, the two publishers have seemingly had a live and let live relationship, mostly because TSR Games Elliott shared on Twitter that it doesn't have the money to file a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Both of the companies have been going by the name TSR Games, and then it goes on from there. But like, to hear that there are two companies with the exact same name and everything, just having that live and, like, you never hear that. You never hear like live and let live. It's no. We had a thing for X amount of years, but now someone with money also wants that thing. Well, we're getting sued and we can't use the name anymore. Like, you never hear about that these days. Like when you watch old WWE stuff, and like even to this day, like all the WWF logos are blurred out, you know, because they can't.
It's bad enough where competing companies will rather drive themselves into the ground in order to say, you can't use my name.
Right.
While they're not producing anything.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they don't have a product, but they're willing to dump so much of their money into like trying to trash someone else that they end up like they become a shell of a company now. And like they could have both kind of made it a little bit, or just, you know, been like knowing you're the bigger entity, people will know you over someone else. But they will literally just like put all their money into their lawsuit and get blown out of the water.
A good example of that lies outside of this specifically, but it's just the one that I've heard most recently. Bert Kreischer is a great example. Stand-up comedian, really successful. You know, I'm the Machine. He had a bunch of stuff early on in his career stolen from another comedian. And one of a big piece of advice that he had gotten from the people he was surrounding himself with earlier is that in this business, it boils down to two different types of things. Do you make your business suing people, or do you make your business making product? Because you can try and do both, but you can't do both. You're either going to spend all your time doing one or the other. And one of them might hurt more, but it'll get you more opportunities. And if you just let that stuff slide, the more you can focus on producing and being better. And the other one, you're just nickel and diming and scraping for stuff that's going to be old and tired. And by the end of it, what you're fighting for is going to be so tarnished, no one's going to want it anymore.
I know it's off track. I want to keep going with this.
Yeah.
Did you
exactly.
guys...
Yeah. But that's another topic another time. But let's talk about that. You're right. To see that with the TSR games thing is getting more commonplace, because also I think that mindset is now being far more embraced by most mainstream, especially, when you're talking about industries that are outside like too big to fail frameworks. You know what I mean?
Well, remember when Monty Python put out clips of their comedy bits? So
yes.
Metallica hates Napster. They were suing Napster. They're going to sue everyone, just sue everyone who's sharing their music. Then Monty Python comes along and they're like, well, someone said, how about you put out high-res clips of your good stuff, throw it on YouTube for free, and then in the description, put a link where they could buy the sets, the DVDs, the Blu-rays, whatever. And they were like, we want us to give this away for free. And they're like, yeah, just seriously. And their revenue was up 600%.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like these are the choices you could make. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But to reframe it back to TSR games is just live and let live is a great idea as long as you're all producing stuff and not, ruining your reputation in the process, which it feels like I think they might have forgotten that last bit.
And looking up different parts, there was different pieces of articles where it's like, well, if you read this article, then Ernie Gygax only said, these couple things which weren't that bad. And then I see a reply that says, okay, but if you saw the rest of the interview, he said some pretty transphobic stuff, and among other things. And it's weird seeing how much hand waving of well, that's not so bad. It's like, no, it's why do you need to say that in the first place? And that's where a lot of the distancing comes from. And a lot of people are just fleeing TSR, and this name that used to mean something isn't.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the bigger reasons why it threw up such a red flag, because of the fact that, I mean, if you pay attention to Dungeons and Dragons and the activity that's going on right now, I mean, there's such a wave of diversity happening in the Dungeons and Dragons and the RPG world right now. It's been flung wide open. The 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is arguably the most widely used platform for role-playing games in general, and even if while there are dozens and dozens of other dozens and dozens of other platforms or styles of RPGs, D&D just is the most popular because, like you said, it's a legacy brand at this point. It's been around for 50 years. Everyone knows it, and people use that as a framework to create their own offshoots because it's so accessible to people. So when you see someone a product and a brand like that, and all of a sudden you see the people that are tied to the legacy of the brand saying some stuff that's in direct contestation with the values that that the company and the game have stood for the longest time, I mean, everyone's going to throw their eyebrows up. It doesn't, regardless of how you feel about it. You're just like, oh wow, that's all right. To quote a very old movie, that's a brilliant strategy. I hope it plays out for him.
So, looking into it, I didn't really get what all the anger was about, and I tried doing some research, and a lot of it stems from the OSR community, which is old school Renaissance or old school revival. And because there's groups of people who would rather play pre-3rd edition, and that's okay. You could probably still buy copies or beat up original, books of your 2nd edition or advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And you could find groups that want to play that edition. It might be harder to locate a group because it's harder to locate, the files, or they're probably all PDF by now anyway. You can just bring it up on your laptop at your gaming session. But it's weird how many people got angry about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, why can't you just be cool with me wanting to play my modern edition and you can play your older edition? And you don't need to throw like all your support behind transphobia, dude. Like, it's not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so
I don't. Oh, all three of us went. That's like a new record.
Someone else go.
Yeah. What were we gonna say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just gonna. I don't understand, and like that's one thing that I've been seeing, especially since D&D. To your point, Brett, is so big these days, especially with fifth edition. Having only played, I believe we've played like an amalgam of like fourth and fifth edition. We've played some fifth edition stuff, and we played like fourth edition with some fifth edition rules mixed in. And like honestly, I don't even give a shit. Like typically, it's like I don't care what we're playing. Just like if these are the rules that we're trying to follow, these are the guidelines that we're following. Cool. Let's have some fun and let's roll some dice. It's not because you get like the rules lawyers and people who like have their player's handbook at the ready, and you know, I have dark vision. Oh, it's dark. I have dark vision. That's apparently a big joke. So I don't understand the like. Play whatever edition you want to play. I have fun. But to be like, no, we're playing second edition, which means there's no wheelchairs in it.
Huh.
Like, you know, like, because accessibility is apparently a hot topic in the role-playing universe these days, and how just the simple thing of, yes, my character's in a wheelchair, and that will set some people off to the point where they feel the need to just blast someone on the internet for trying to change the thing that they love. I am all for nostalgia. I love nostalgia. I cling to stupid things because they remind me of happy times, you know, like when I was younger. I totally 100% get that. But I will never understand nostalgia and then using nostalgia to justify real shitty beliefs.
Or justifying elitism or gatekeeping in some way where you're like, oh, well, I've been playing this longer than you, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Do you remember when you first started playing and you had no one to play with? Well, now you have people that are interested, but you now want to shoo them away because they want to do something that's different. I mean, it's kind of piggyback off. Did you have more to say? I didn't mean to steamroll you.
That was about it. Like it and like the gatekeep, like that's what it comes down to in a lot of ways is just really shitty gatekeeping, people feeling superior because they liked a thing before other people liked a thing, and they like an older version of that thing that the other people have never seen before. You know, it's like that. Remember that guy? There's a guy on Twitter a couple months ago who came out and he's like, you know, honestly, anime should be gate kept. I am all for gatekeeping in anime because it keeps, you know, when more people like an anime, it becomes watered down and politically correct. So yeah, keep those people out of anime so we can see like the real hardcore shit. And it's like, okay, dude. Not only is that the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but it's, anyways. Gatekeeping sucks. And it's in every single thing. And like, I never knew about these horrible like subsets of the community up until just recently. I didn't know, like, it's just a game. It's a game that people do and play to have fun with their friends, and some people are so goddamn serious about it. Holy shit. Anyways, but Brett, you had a point. Go ahead.
No, well, yeah, I mean, you kind of touched base on it anyway. I mean, I think we're called kind of dancing around into certain degrees, but I know for me, like, I think it's weird watching people become gatekeepers of content. Well, it's the thing that always gets lost on me, because they're just like, oh, right, like, do you not remember, like, all this content, comic books, science fiction, like Dungeons & Dragons, role-playing games. I don't mean extrapolate it, but just for the sake of my argument, is that there was the time that we all remember, at least all of us in our age group, like, we remember, like, this stuff was made for the weirdos, and everyone who participated or paid attention to that we're weirdos. Like, people literally call people, like, back in the 80s, the satanic panic. That means that literally you were embarrassed and could not tell people that you liked playing tabletop RPG games because the greater community thought that you worshipped Satan, that you were summoning demons by pretending that you were in Lord of the Rings. That's where we were at as a culture 40 years ago. And so anyone who like subscribed to that, or anyone growing up with that, should to some capacity or another feel like the proverbial other, feel that they found a connection to material that spoke to them when they felt like they were alone in the entire world. Now, let's boost it up 40 years. Guess what? The world has changed. You know who else feels that way? People that the game is now drawing into. People that are from different backgrounds, different diversities, people who did different beliefs, people who are considered weird and are embracing this thing. They're holding on and carrying on the tradition that started this game in the first place, amongst all the other things. So it's weird for me to say, hey, I remember when I was the odd man out, or like feeling like I didn't belong. And then later on to see all these other people who may also feel like they don't belong participating. And then for me to go, no, that's not right. You didn't experience this the way that I did. Therefore, you do not get to experience it at all on my terms, whatever those terms may be. That baffles me to no end. And I wish I was smarter to be able to formulate it in a way to get people to understand that, where it's just like, you can either build your walls up or out. Build your walls out, because the things that people are doing, things change. And the problem is that most people associate change with loss. When they see things happening that don't necessarily reflect their personal story, they see that as a threat to themselves. They take it very personally, because we all love this stuff very much. But I think there is a weird defense mechanism that gets kicked in when you have something that's so sacred that might have carried you through a vulnerable part in your time. If you feel like that is being, if you are made to believe that is under attack, you can act a specific way. And I just disagree with all of it, because like we all understand being the weird kid. We all understand being accused of doing stuff we never did, or being thought of doing things that we never did. And for me, to someone who's grown up like that, to be like, yeah, people who are not like me want to come and join in on this, dude, come on in, man. Let's do this. What are we gonna make? Let's have some fun. Let's be friends. Let's so like, sorry, it's a long tirade, but it's just like, but it's the thing where I'm just like, I never experienced it in a way where I felt like I had to treat someone else like crap because they liked the same thing I liked, or they liked a version of the same thing I liked, or at least I did, or at least it didn't affect me in a way where I felt like the world was ending.
I'm really curious to know what the Game to Grow guys might have to say about all this.
Yeah.
Because I've made the distinction in comic books of how a lot of times comic books are your escape, because maybe your life isn't that great and you can read Batman, where you can pretend to be in this amazing, brilliant, rich Olympian. And then sometimes you also want to identify with something. And you find characters that have flaws, and you can identify with them because their life is rough. And so I get points where, well, so let's say you're disabled somehow, and you want to play a game where you're the complete opposite. You're super powered. Your strength is amazing. Your hearing is incredible. You don't have the same neurological issues you might have in this game. But at the same time, it's fun to role play maybe as yourself in other situations. So it took me a little while to get through that and figure that out. It's like, well, no, yeah, maybe I'm in a wheelchair in my game as well. And that's giving them an extra outlet to deal with their situations, and also maybe have some fun. Like, they can ramp their wheelchair over the cavern while shooting arrows at orcs and shit. That sounds like a blast.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I hadn't witnessed yet. So one of the things I wanted to get to, because I keep saying these people, one of the things that lit up for me was when Gen Con and Origins, these two conventions or trade shows, banned TSR La NASA from going to their shows. They weren't invited. They were told they're not allowed to go. They're banned. And I saw people like get furious about how their old school gaming culture was now not allowed. It's like, it's not the culture. It's just the shitty people, dude. And that's one of the things people are mad about. And I saw a guy say, well, he's going to boycott Gen Con. And someone in the comments goes, hey, just curious, when was the last time you went to Gen Con? It's like, it was over 17 years ago. Like, you weren't going to go anyway, you dumb shit. Like,
yeah.
But at no point did I see anyone make a solid list of why they don't like new additions. I looked up on, there's a wiki about how they like how the older role-playing was more spontaneous and the Dungeon Master was more like, you know, would just have to answer stuff like spur of the moment and not have to look up like stats or rules or whatever. And part of the argument there is that arguing between having to know the story and play it out versus just spontaneously saying, yeah, you could do that, and here's the result. Apparently, that's one of the differences in the DMing, dungeon mastering or game mastering, which I had never thought of. It's like, can't we all just do that anyway? But a lot of the complaints are people who complain about the more modern stuff and the more stuff from WotC is that it's too much woke culture being shoved in their faces. And I'm like, what don't you like, dude? Like, I don't get what you hate about the newer product.
Yeah.
And because I'm sure you had hot androgynous elves in your game, and there are now. I'm positive bards would try to romance anything in the 80s as they do now. Like, there's no list of what you're mad about. And that's what I'm getting confused on. Because you could just play the game the way you want.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's a kind of piggyback off of like what, I mean, I know we're kind of going off into the weeds kind of a little bit, but well, I think I'm more at fault for that. But then, it's an episode with me, and we know how this goes. But like to speak to your point exactly, like I know one of the big things that got a lot of the old schoolers really mad is that when 5th edition came out, and like, and it's really like on Twitter, because everyone really brings up, they're like, wait, how come entire races are evil? Like, wait, why is that? Like, the kind of the joke is like, oh, well, every group has the Drow Ranger, and everyone's arguing about like, oh, well, all Drow are evil, and it's like, well, how come we have to make an entire race of people evil? Like, isn't that kind of outdated and kind of not really like a great way to like experience the game right now? Like, because a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't like the way that game, I don't like that lore in my game anymore, so we're going to change it. Like Drow, goblins, orcs, you can play as all these characters. Like, I play a goblin in one of mine, and I'm sure if you talk to some old guard, you know, some older RPG player, they're gonna scoff and be like, "Oh, that's ridiculous. Goblins are only evil, and you only kill goblins and blah 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 blah." Right. Like, and if that's the way you want to play, that's great. But guess what? There are other. I don't know. Actually, that brings it up to, it's a clash. I say clash. It's a culture clash. Mm-hmm. I hate people that say culture war, because that is making a mountain out of an anthill. It's a clash at best. You have people that are like, hey, I want to experience this game as a storyteller, and invite my friends to tell this story. Whereas opposed to a lot of the old guard people, they experience it as a game. Like I think when you play with enough people, you end up finding a lot of the people that will treat it as, oh, I'm telling a story with my friends, and you'll find the people that treat it like a game. And when you see people that treat it like a game, they're like, all right, how much money can I get out of this? How much stuff can my character get? Mm-hmm. How much of the spotlight can my character hog? And that's cool if that's the game you want to play. If you find a bunch of people that you really want to fight tooth and nail for every moment, that's awesome.
And then you ask them, did you have fun?
Yeah, exactly. Like, or worse, you had fun. But
did anyone else have fun?
But all of a sudden your group can't find time to play anymore. Gee, I wonder why. Huh. Like, but like, it's one of those things where, I bounced on all over the place. Back to my point where I was talking about races, is that like, that was a big, I remember that was a big talking point. I don't have a Twitter account, but I know that on Twitter, that was a big hot button issue where people are like, oh, you can play any race. Like, oh, races you can't consider races evil anymore. And people thought, a lot of people were saying that is considered woke culture. And you're like, no, it's just considered good storytelling. if everyone plays Drow anyway, are Drow that evil if every group has a Drow Ranger that doesn't kill people? Like you know, and a lot of that comes back from criticisms of the old school material. And, you know, sometimes people can look into that and see socio-political commentary in the older editions and think that it's indicative of something. But so guess what happens is that you have a bunch of people that want to change that. And the more people it's exposed to, the longer that the game is played, the more that stuff's going to be boring. Like, that's great. You played a game that specific way for 30 years. But, like, guess what? Prime example, like, hey, you know what? Excite Bike for NES was real fun, but it's been the same for 30 years. Unless Switch comes out with a remastered edition and puts some new stuff in, I don't really think I'm going to play it or be that excited about it anymore. I know what it looks like. You make the ramps, you fall, it takes forever to get back on the bike. So it just sucks to see people that could theoretically be having like such a great time just standing there stomping their feet, watching the world go by them because they're mad that their very specific notions are not being catered to. Ironically enough, that's the case while they're seeing other people building the things that they want and asking to see the things that makes them show up in the world that they want to see in. So that's just a weird parallel that I just could not get my head around. You're like, I'm not being catered to. How come I'm not, you know, whatever. Maybe it's not that. I could be way off base. Sorry if I'm upsetting anyone with my weird ass tirades. This is intense, Brett. You don't normally get me on an OMV episode like this, so hopefully you got a treat. And hopefully you're not too mad at me.
we've seen the post where it's like your first D&D character is like an elf fighter, then your fifth D&D character is a wizard loaf of bread that carries itself by mage hand.
Yeah. 3 kobolds in a trench coat.
Yeah, I remember the first character that I ever made, which is like from the game that we all played together. Yeah, you know, all this I put hours into and I wanted to make it just right. And like at the end of the day, the character just ends up being me, but a barbarian dragon man. Yeah, and everything was abandoned. And then every character after that, whenever I make it, I'm like, this time I'm gonna be serious. I'm gonna do role playing. And it just turns into me again. Maybe I'm just bad at role playing. I think that's what it is.
No.
But it's just, I mean, at the end of the day, play the game. However, like, if there's a version of the game that you like, you play that version. You do you. But if you're gonna be mad at people for wanting representation and inclusivity, and you think that there's no place for it in your game, just shut up. Just stop. Just stop. Yeah. People can acknowledge that shit in the past is problematic, and like remember the Looney Tunes stuff?
Yeah.
Where there was like the warning before, like, hey, when this was made, it was a different time, and we recognize that it's kind of shitty, you know. And like there were actually people upset about that. Like, because, oh my God, woke culture is gone too far. Like, dude, stop. Yeah. Like, that's the stupidest thing to get upset about. Like, you say that, like, oh, snowflake, like, people who make fun of the snowflakes and the people who get upset about shit, like, you're mad because, like, people are just being like, hey, you know, just a heads up. Like, if trigger warnings upset you in a way, not necessarily because there are triggers in it, if they upset you because they exist, the actual warning itself exists, just reevaluate. Just go back and think, you know what? I need to just kind of take stock and really think about what matters, because the things that you're upset about, apparently, just work on it. Be a better person.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we definitely broaden this into something non D&D related, but that's fine. It's still good stuff to say. But like, I was trying to work it back to springboard off of what you're talking about. Is just like, but at the same time, like, we have our own thoughts, but then it's the problem that it's the issue, because like I think all of us have, and especially, you know, we've all had those issues where like we can see things a certain way and we wish other people saw things the other way, and like, and I find this with like, it's like you wish you'd. I mean, I find myself wishing that I had the right way to say something or convey something in a way that could, you know, like, I'm sure if Ernie, like, I mean, I've never met the guy. I don't follow him. I to be completely honest, I really wasn't too familiar with TSR games or Ernie Gygax until the story came out and I started reading up about it. So obviously that gives me a bit of a biased look into who this person is. But at the end of the day, where I'm just like, you're getting mad about things that at the end of the day, I could think of three, at least bare minimum, three minor things that could happen that would change your mind immediately. Like, you don't think a specific way you think, whoever you think, you have opinions on a specific person or what you believe a specific group of people are, like, you're one day away of meeting someone from that group that's going to radically change and change the way that you think about that group of people, if you are open to it. But being stubborn and refusing to see that and clinging to your laurels because you think that's the punk radical, I'm free to think this, even though it takes the smallest of stones to pierce that wet paper bag of logic, then like I don't know how to tell you that you should maybe not feel that way. And maybe if seeing the blowback from those thoughts is kind of crazy. And some people might see that as like people, like the people at large, like the culture has absolutely shifted to the point where like those types of lines of thinking are not being accepted. And I think that's ultimately a good thing, because with all the problems in the world, like unity is the one thing that we kind of need. So when you see people crapping on people for no good reason, like, I'm glad that somewhere in the world people are saying like, no, you don't need to do that. Like, that's not good. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's the least poetic statement I think I've said all day, but not good. Brett Kelley, 2021.
Did you guys see the just like kind of in the vein of D&D, like with everything that we said and how big D&D is? I saw a couple things late last week that was like, Matt Mercer, please save D&D, like, because D&D is apparently not doing well. Huh. And I'm like, what? Like, yeah. I just pulled up the Critical Role Kickstarter from last year just to reference. Remember when they made $11.3 million for a D&D themed cartoon?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's now coming out on Amazon Prime, 2 seasons.
Right. Yeah. It's just like, what are you talking about? Like, and maybe they meant it in a different way. Like, Matt Mercer needs to save D&D from people who get upset about inclusivity. Yes. And
actually, and to even tie it back to our conversation about the old guard and the new guard, like Matthew Mercer DM'd for Stephen Colbert.
Dude, like, that was so good.
Yeah. Right. But that is a brilliant example of an old guard and new guard, and like to reference that, if anyone listening hasn't seen that, do yourself a favor, and then also go watch the interview with Joe Manganiello and Stephen Colbert, where they just talk about D&D the entire show, where like Stephen goes, this is going to alienate most of our audience, but I don't care, but like it's a prime example. Like, Stephen Colbert is an old guard guy, so to hear him talk about it, you're like, oh yeah, like like he got mad, like Joe Manganiello tells him like, my D&D character is a Dragonborn, and Steven goes, what? You can be a Dragonborn? He goes, yeah, like they introduced the race in like the earlier D&D. He goes, well, when back in my day you had to earn it, and it was a funny bar, but it's a good example. Yeah. But then to fast forward in the Red Nose Day gameplay, Matt Mercer made a great point where Steve goes, yeah, like in my day, we had the red booklet, and then you had to do this, that, and the other thing, and like, and if you couldn't do this, and we didn't have maps, and we didn't have this, and everything wasn't laid out for us. And then Matt, like, politely with a smile on his face, just kind of goes, yep. And you remember how hard it was to find people that wanted to play with you? He's like, and that's why, like, the game has been made more accessible. It's evolved, like, and there are creative people that are developing new content all the time. I mean, the D&D community is ravenous for content. I mean, they do like 3 or 4 book releases annually, I think, at this point. And they have the cream of the crop doing it, and like different voices, and it's so exciting. Like, and they have the weird stories. Like, I forget what was Mysteries at Candlekeep, I think. The Candlekeep Mysteries. It was like a recent one where like they just got a bunch of people that really like D&D and wrote a bunch of one-shot stories. And I guess Amy Vorpal wrote one that like everyone on the board was like, yeah, like we have 12 stories, and then, whoa, this story from Amy Vorpal, which is the most insane thing I've ever heard. And I'm just like, this is great. Huh. but like it's great to see, like, because Matt, like, Matt, I think, like, I was definitely, I fell into Critical Role really early on, and I'm not as like I don't avidly watch the show as much as I did when I, like, back when I first kind of discovered it for myself. But like like Matt's is beloved because he's a caring, good, genuinely good person. Like, and everyone likes to rip on, like, it made $1 million. You're like, how many tens of, like, hundreds of thousands of dollars they've raised for like 7 different charities over the course of 5 years? Like, they're not, like, that's what it always bought. Like, I don't know. It's just crazy. Cause like, they support the troops, they support indigenous peoples, they support BIPOC of numerous organizations. Like they support, child literacy and child creativity and child and all. You name some sort of cause, and they have a hand in it somewhere, doing something with it. It's so cool. But yeah, man. I was hoping, I was like, this is the year where I reclaim my ADHD, and I already dropped the ball.
We're just making up for lost time, man. It's been a while since it's been just Brett, so.
Yeah, man.
And of the three of us, you play far and away the most D&D, especially over the last year. You have played a colossal amount.
Yeah, I owe that to Babs, my lovely partner in crime, Dungeon Master. She's been wrecking house, running all sorts of games. It's been super fun, and I've been learning a lot while playing too. Like, I can't wait until we get to play again, because like it's just been fun conditioning myself to playing, and like my play style has definitely been refined, and it's gotten a lot more fun. Like, I play a lot of ridiculous characters now, and it's been a lot less. Like, I think starting out, I definitely played it a specific way that made it where I was torturing myself a lot. I was like, I can't roll a 1, man. I can't do it. And you're like, it's gonna happen. That's just how it is. It's just how you're gonna roll with it, man. Like, it's just, the hard lessons where you kind of figure out how to play. And now when you play more often, you just get, you just find the fun in the challenges of things not going the way you want it to go. So yeah, it's been super fun.
For reference, we recorded an amazing episode, one of my favorites over the last like 12 months, with Babs last December. It was episode 419 with Babs, titled Dungeons and Babbins. And it was a very fun episode, talking about all the DM work that she's been doing, especially throughout the pandemic. It's crazy to think that I'm like, oh yeah, it was in December, which feels like it was like 3 months ago, but it was actually 7 months ago. It's kind of hitting. Time is meaningless, and it really it's hitting hard these days. But it was a really fun episode. Loved talking with Babs, especially about D&D. A lot of fun. Anyways, so D&D, weird shit. Play whatever you like. Be inclusive, and if you're mad at a few people for being inclusive, you're mad for the wrong reasons. You're mad at the wrong things. Yep. There are a lot better things and more constructive things to be mad about. Try that.
Yeah. And then don't be mad. And then if you say some stuff that is purposefully just antagonistic, like, maybe don't be surprised when people don't want to associate with you anymore. That's kind of, and then maybe don't necessarily just assume that it's like, oh, it's just business, it's like, it's just a business, whatever. Like, all right, I thought, marketplace of ideas, if they.
Last thing, as far as like the guys from TSR. Yeah. So I think it's Justin Lanassa. He has a history of making his employees wrestle in grits for a title of head shop girl at his tattoo shop. That's who you're siding with if you're fighting over old school Renaissance gaming. That's the kind of person who wants to put out the games that you want to back him for that. That's, I mean, maybe, take a step back, take a better look around.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Grits wrestling.
Gross.
Yeah. Anyway.
Gross. That's like the shit. Did you guys watch Tiger King?
Nope.
No.
Then my reference is going to be completely off. I don't blame you for not watching it. It's horrific.
The only thing I know is the meme of like, I will never financially recover from this. That's about the best. That's the most insight I have on the show.
Do you guys know what he's talking about in that meme?
Didn't a trainer get like mauled?
A trainer's arm or a trainer's hand got ripped off. And he was concerned that he wasn't going to be able to financially recover from that.
Okay. Well,
anyways, yeah, Tiger King was man, that was an ordeal. That was quite the show. So,
yeah.
we do have another topic to touch on.
Hell yeah.
And this one deals with we're transitioning over to the comics world. We haven't talked about comics in a while. So let's talk about something fucking weird in comics, because apparently, love him or hate him, J. Scott Campbell exists. J. Scott Campbell makes art. Some people will buy everything he makes. Some people not so much a fan. I get it, and I hate to both sides it. Like you're allowed to like it. You're allowed to not like it. That's part of the biz.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, not everyone, but there's a very famous cover from Spider-Man
601.
601. You had that chambered, dog.
Oh yeah,
that was beautiful. A very famous cover. Mary Jane on the couch with the coffee or tea or whatever, and in the impossible pose,
the ripped jeans,
the ripped jeans, and it's the male fantasy. It's comic books. Comic books have been drawing people in ridiculous proportions and positions since day one. But someone corrected it. Someone fixed it and posted it on Twitter. And thus starts the shit.
Yeah.
And
which, to be fair, before this, that has been a thing, and it's kind of weird. Like the practice of fixing it, it happens more on Tumblr. Once again, a place I have an account for, but I made it and then left it alone for 10 years.
Yeah,
but
that's the way everyone does it.
Yeah, that's what we did. I remember there was a time when I was trying to grow the OMV Tumblr, and I think it still exists, but I haven't touched it in probably 7 years.
Yeah, but the act of fixing another person's work, it's not unheard of. It's not a brand new thing, but I think this is definitely one of the few cases where and it's been happening more recently, where somebody who is considered an amateur artist, and maybe I don't mean to cut in on telling the story as you're telling it, so please shut me up if you'd like, or if I miss anything. But the idea is that an artist who, an artist who is considered a non-professional because they aren't doing paid comic book work at the time, or at least not that I'm aware of, decided to do this to a professional comic, and then the professional comic book, J. Scott Campbell in question, decided to clap back with his own critique of the critique. So, yeah, and then lo and behold, things happened.
A lot happened.
Yeah.
Well, so if I'm going to make something, if I'm doing makeup, and I say, Brett, what do you think? And we'll be able to tell between each other, Brett, help me. Can you help me fix this? Did I do anything right? Did I do anything wrong? Versus, what do you think? And you're just like, it's fine. And I go, all right, cool. Goodbye, person that I just painted. Versus, someone, or if it's a student versus teacher, they know they're submitting this looking for advice. They know there's a process, but if you're professional, there's already a line of people gauging your work. J. Scott Campbell, he had an editor. There's an editor-in-chief. There's his own editor. There's the publisher. A bunch of people have to look at this and go, yep, and stamp it and say, we're going to print that. I'm sure he could have had someone say, do this again, redo that part, redo this part. Spider-Man's in the wrong suit in the background. Can you fix that? Because he's swinging through the city and through a window or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there's always opportunities to be like, this is what we hired this person for. We're going to print their work the way they made it.
Yeah.
And past that, there's not really necessary to go back to it. No one's asking for that to be fixed. On the other hand, there has been a neat thing I've been seeing on Instagram is the draw this in your style, which I've been digging.
Yes.
And I really dig watching other people be take a composition or a figure or a pose and then doing it in their version, because that's what's being encouraged, is your own version of something. And seeing the diversity is incredible. I really dig that. I like following those. But that's not what this one was. No one asked to have 601 redrawn. But yet we've all looked at it. There's been cosplayers that want to copy it and take their own pictures and sell prints and whatever. And like, we get it. And we've always known, like, J. Scott, like, he doesn't draw perfect women. But that's what he gets hired for. He caught flack for drawing Ironheart, Riri Williams, as like a hot 20-something when she's 14. At some point, the editor should know who they're hiring and why they're hiring them. And kind of get across, like, you're drawing an adolescent, so just put her in the armor or something, and don't draw her the way you would draw a mature woman.
Yes.
But confusion happened on that one. A lot of people got mad, and it was like, well, I didn't know the character, didn't know what I was doing, but I got paid for it anyway. And you can't always.
And he was also, I think he did. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You can't always blame the artist for what they were hired for if they're not educated on what they're making.
Yeah. Because there's also the thing too, where like, oh yeah, J. Scott Campbell also did a whole bunch of Alice in Wonderland and a lot of like his own versions of Disney princesses, I believe, a long time ago, which were like he kind of did the same thing to a lot of those, like to Alice in Wonderland. He definitely drew Alice a little bit older than she's normally depicted in the stories, and everyone loved it. So I'm sure he was operating based off of the assumption that, like, knowing that the work that he does through that too, I'm sure he applied that process the same way. Yeah. I'm trying to build more credence to your point is what my intent on that was.
So like, but now the cover's been done. It's been out for years. It's been many years. I'm trying to remember. And like, it's so someone decides like, well, maybe it doesn't have to be asexual. Maybe we'll make the shirt a bit bigger. Maybe we'll change the pose to make like the human body might be able to do it now. And I could see that happening as practice. I could see someone like taking an established piece of art and being like, well, how would I do this differently? And what might I change? The thing is, you don't got to tell anybody else about that. And even if you do, you're still learning. If you're doing it if you're doing it as practice, like, maybe you should still be open to some critique yourself, because you're also not perfect.
Yeah. Yep.
Jared, like,
I was just about to call you in because sorry.
It's like, and from what I'm reading, I pulled up there's an article about it from Bleeding Cool this was back in May, and apparently the original cover is from 2009. So 12 years ago? Yeah. And it's been around so long that even J. Scott Campbell parodied the image himself. It was referenced in Marvel Comics 1000, and like, Mary Jane is quoted saying, like, you don't think I actually sit that way, do you? And she's in like a similar outfit, but she's just like eating chips and dip on a couch. So it's been parodied. J. Scott Campbell has acknowledged that it was, it wasn't the greatest. But like, J. Scott Campbell has a style, and that's how he draws. So, I mean, there is the argument. Maybe you could learn to be a little more realistic, and instead of drawing all women exactly the same. I mean, that's what people get on Art Germ about. It's like, oh, every single Art Germ woman is exactly the same. But then there's people who would defend Art Germ to the death. And that spirals into a whole nother discussion of blind allegiances and fandoms and just people going insane for stupid reasons. But anyways, I'm going to be a fence sitter. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be the enlightened centrist, because where J. Scott Campbell's not really my cup of tea in terms of the art. That's just my opinion. It doesn't do it for me. So like, and I totally get the person's like, hey, I fixed this because I thought it was bad, but you got to be ready for the clapback. Like, if you're going to come at this person and say, what you did is bad and I fixed it, they have every right to be like, okay, well, I'm going to defend myself. And I mean, J. Scott Campbell was brutal. He did not hold back. Use the person's name constantly. I believe the person has since deleted their account.
I saw they changed
I'm not
their
sure.
name.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's also where's the line for J. Scott Campbell to realize that he has a much larger following, he has a much larger fan base, like 600,000 people or some shit like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the actual number. Like,
it's a lot,
and it turns into the brigading culture of like, I'm posting this with the intent of my fans going after this person.
And more often than not, like, sure, there are fans that are probably like that are going after it, but you also know that there's a small contingent of that are just people looking for a reason to be a jerk to another person. Like,
right.
For sure.
And like, is it on J. Scott Campbell to be the bigger person and just kind of brush it off because he's the industry professional? Or does he have the right to defend himself and do exactly what this person did to him?
Yeah.
But it's also, the art could be considered problematic. That's not how women look like. It's an what's the word I'm looking for? Unrealistic representation. That's what a lot of people get on about. Lumpy guys like me get on. Not every man is a chiseled Greek Adonis. Like all the dudes in comics, but also like. Yeah, and not every woman is a buxom, size 1 or size 0, with ridiculous proportions. But also, that's how he draws. That's always been J. Scott Campbell. Then again, is that shitty of me to say? Is that just justifying and pushing stupid norms and bad representations?
But no, for sure. Like, it's tough. I mean, because there are good arguments both for and against on both sides of that argument. And I prefer stuff like this just because of the fact that, sometimes things don't have to necessarily be absolutely one way or the other. I prefer, because because we're all intelligent people. We can argue one way or the other and still have good arguments that are hard to refute, because I think we're good at criticizing ourselves like that, at least the three of us. And actually, I'm glad that you brought me on, because this is the first time this year that I finally get to use my art degree for something. Because ultimately what it was is that, like, and everything you guys said is 100% accurate and correct in terms of like what the scope was and the reaction, but like the way, so I'm going to err on giving the benefit of the doubt to both parties in some way where. But with some asterisks. But like, for me personally speaking, is that the way that the original amateur artist presented that post was clearly meant to be antagonistic. It was passive aggressive in tone. However, is what that they did textbook a thing that happens in the art world, especially if you're in art college? Yeah, that is a commonplace thing where, like, if you, depending on what type of art school you go to, if you're going into your foundations class, if you're drawing something from a reference or you're creating something, that is typically what happens in a teacher-student relationship. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it the equivalent of like pass your test to the other student and they'll correct it with you?
Oh man, remember that?
Kind of, yeah. Like, okay. Or at least that's like the basis of the exercise. Right. But another thing that'll happen is that once again, this depends on a lot of variables. Depends on the art school you go to, depends on the art teacher that you have at the time.
Right.
Some art teachers will either look at your work and say, nope, you screwed it up, throw it in the fire and do it again. Or someone will just come in with a red pen and will literally just be like, all right, here's where you did this. Red pen. You fix the jawline here, you shorten the legs here, you fix up, you make this more fluid, blah, blah, blah. And it is very comparable to what the post did. However, the big thing to remember is that J. Scott Campbell is student to no one. And the person making that post is I would guess, I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm guessing they were not an accredited professor at a university. Self-taught artist, that type of thing. Like, that in certain, from an artist standpoint, seeing that, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. But however, it was the delivery. There was a way that artist could have presented that information in a way that that could have been way more acceptable, instead of like being like, oh, I'm just going to subtly trash this person. I'm going to act like a high road, like I'm better than this person. Like, I'm really just going to throw this person on the bus and be really hoity-toity about it. Really like stroke my own ego and be like, oh, look how good I am and how masterful I am. And as if the person doesn't realize that J. Scott Campbell made his career on drawing, cultivating his personal style. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the reason why J. Scott reacted the way he did, because it wasn't necessarily attacking the way he draws. It was attacking the style that he has been doing professionally for his entire career that has been valued by people. Now, whether or not you want to consider that value, whether or not you value his work the same way, that's a completely different conversation. Mm-hmm. But it's very clear that it wasn't. So it's weird to see that, but then also, like, yeah, there's a level of responsibility around everyone involved, and I'm sure that the person who did that probably didn't realize it was going to pop off that hard. Mm-hmm. Like, if they realized that they would have, because you know how it is, like 80% of most stuff that goes viral like this, like it was literally just made by somebody just trying to blow off some steam and just trying to like get out some frustrations, and didn't realize like, 500,000 people just saw this and are and now have opinions on this. Where like, I guarantee you that user has gone years of posting stuff every day and not getting anything and being like, well, this is just going to be another drop in the bucket of nothing that's going to happen. And then when you see it and you're not ready for it, oh no, boy, is your face red,
There's always that hope that the internet is a magical thing. And
yes,
you all you need is this one thing to become super famous and start getting your time in the spotlight. And sometimes like they think this is what it's going to be. And unfortunately, that's not going to make Sideshow take away their signature series of statues away from J. Scott Campbell and give them to you. That's not how the business works.
Nope. I mean, and famously enough, like the thing that happens is, and once again, like I'm going to say something and there's good arguments for and against it, where it's like the idea of, in the market, especially with art, is that like, you can be mad at people who get jobs and stuff like that, and you're more than welcome to do that. I mean, goodness knows we for Christ's sake, I mean, we all can name off a bunch of more artists that deserve that treatment other than J. Scott Campbell. That should be deserved to be raked over the coals a little bit harder than than Mr. Campbell, without question. But that aside, the point I mean to get at is that like is there responsibility? Nope, and it just fell out of my head as I was saying it. But like, I guess the thought I mean to have is that like, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And does this need to be said by me now? Should be taken into consideration on both parties. But and I just remembered is that so in the industry where you have these people that you build up that have built up audiences and stuff like that, like you can go right off the bat and try and attack the creators that already have their jobs that have fought for those places, or you can do what those creators did, is develop their own body of work and then develop your own audience, which then attracts the big people to you. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the internet is a magical place where sometimes you can circumvent that or bypass that through sheer stroke of lottery like luck and excellence and right place, right time, knowing the right person type of stuff. Like that's a dream for most people. But as you really rightly said, like when it hits like that, you better be prepared. And if you're not, then dear boy, it's gonna be bad.
Well, it's
back to my
it reoccurred to me when you were like, J. Scott Campbell doesn't have to answer to anybody. Like, I am unfamiliar with how old the art fixer person is, but I would guess that they were still teenager or under by the time Scott had put out Danger Girl. Like, and Danger Girl's maintained some popularity since then, and that had to be over 20 years ago.
Yeah. And once again, like, and this has been happening a lot more too, where you have people like, I mean, I've seen it more with stand-up comedy just because that's just been where I've been seeing most of it. But it's like, it's fascinating seeing like the digital generation finding all this stuff. And this is a big problem on the internet anyway, where like most, we live in a world where there's literally a million different Facebook groups that take 50 years worth of visual content without context, without frame of reference, without any idea, and just slap it out as if it's new content, hoping to snag in people that have no idea what this is. So it's just like, it'd be the equivalent of like you or, any of us stumbling across like a Van Gogh painting that we'd never seen before, being like, oh, he never painted that. And someone coming along being like, He painted that when that was the first painting he like that almost sold in his first gallery show, dude. Sit down, you don't know this, and that is, the internet is rife with that now, because we have now at least 2 generations of people that do not have that, like, or don't have that context. So someone could have seen that J. Scott Campbell comic book, thinking that it came out last week, not realizing that J. Scott Campbell has has 12 years of honing his craft over a decade and some change. Like, all that context is important, and obviously that context is purposefully left out for the purposes of driving home the point that the poster and J. Scott Campbell wanted to prove. Mm-hmm. J. Scott reached out because, you know what, I'm sure it's not the first time he's been slammed by stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure it was a moment of catharsis. And I think you're right on saying that. I think if you have 600,000 followers, you probably should be a little bit more mindful of how you choose to wield that audience.
Yeah.
Like you might not have wanted the responsibility of having influence or some sort of opinion that is valued among 600,000 people, but you do. And therefore, if you say some stuff and all of a sudden this under legal age aspiring artist is now getting death threats from like 30-year-old men that have from angry 30-year-olds across the United States and the world.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's not going to be good, and that's going to be hard to justify. Because, like, I'm sure J. Scott Campbell didn't want that. He was just like, oh, I'm just going to humble pie. Here's it is. Like, congratulations. And yeah, did he put some extra sass and stank on it? Yeah. And I'm sure it made him feel real good when he's saying it. But it's like, it's above my pay grade to say whether or not anyone should or should not do that. Mm-hmm. But I think the bigger thing is just understanding the way that the digital culture works right now. And it's not, and it's purposely obfuscates a lot of the finer nuance. That's like kind of the weird thing that bothers me, is that, like, you would think when we have access to the world's gigantic, like, most foremost database of knowledge, mm-hmm. we would have learned to kind of like take in information a little bit more, or learn those things that are important, that makes pieces, or like learn how to extrapolate necessary information from pieces. But this is not how our brains work sometimes. Yeah. Like, if you get someone real mad and emotionally combative, then they're just going to knee-jerk reaction, and they're going to say and do some stuff that they might not be proud of or want repeated. And the internet is a permanent place. So it's
the internet's both predictable and yet not.
Yes. As I get more abstract while we talk about this, as is the usual, but it's just I'm reminded of a bit that I tried to do, but I'm not funny enough to do a comedy bit on. But it's like, the thing is, like, humans are fascinating for their ability to make amazing things, and then take those amazing things and make them the worst things in the world. The worst thing possible. Yeah. You're like, you forget, like, a guy invented dynamite to save lives from people tunneling through mountains, and we gave that guy the Nobel Peace Prize when that first came out. Yep. And then everyone's like, yes, you're saving countless lives. Yeah, don't let Ralph hold on to that, though, because then he's not going to be alive anymore. Hey, Ralph, catch. You're like, oh, okay, great. So now we just found out a brand new way to hurt each other.
It's immediately war, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Ugh. Human creativity is both the most magical and horrifying thing, I think, that's on Earth at this point, at this moment.
Or in a while, but...
Yeah, at least for another 5 seconds. But yeah, so I mean, I know that's kind of really long drawn out pun, but like, yeah, I don't know if I dropped anything off or I cut you off at all, JR, or like if there's anything else that, like, for that story, just because it's nutty. Like, I don't know how to, can't condone or can't condemn or condone. Dr. Manhattan.
I mean, it's one of those situations where, like, it's not like it keeps popping in my mind, like on Am I the Asshole, the subreddit?
Yeah.
Where, like, people can respond like, everyone sucks here. Mm. Like, it's not that everyone sucks here. It's just the person had the right to criticize J. Scott Campbell, but, like, J. Scott Campbell also had the right to defend himself. But, like, also, did he have to go that far? But then again, he had the right to do it. It's just the fucking internet, man. The internet sucks.
Yeah.
Especially with, like, with clapback culture and and everyone just trying to dunk on other people. Yeah, God, but like, I totally get it. Cause like I said, I mean, J. Scott Campbell's not really my cup of tea. His art's not really for me.
Well, how much
I don't collect
different?
His work, but like at the same time, Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
How much different would the response have been if he took like a more humble road to be like, yeah, I know you're right. It's been 10 years. Like, it's not a new thing. And I'm going to try to do better.
Right.
Because sometimes I've seen, like, I don't know, sports. I've seen people playing Ultimate Frisbee, people I've played with, and they run into each other. And one person gets mad about it. And they go, oh, you do that again, it's going down. And they go, all right, do it. It's like you realize if you just said, I'm sorry, they're absolutely disarmed. Like, either of you could have said, I'm sorry, and apologized for bumping into them playing Frisbee. But now you're challenging them to fight you. Like, what are you doing? And just being aware of the situation, it's like you're allowed to be like, well, your fix wasn't perfect. Here's how I'd fix that. But at the same time, like, you're kind of right. I get it. Like, my work's not perfect. You're allowed to say that, dude.
Right.
Yeah. And even then, like, once, and I think I'm at this point where I'm repeating myself, but like the original poster who posted the critique, like, they absolutely could have presented that exercise in a completely different capacity, and it would have been, I guarantee you, it would have been received with a fraction of the blowback that it had. It was because I read it, like, I saw it, like the tone of it was very visceral. It was very, like, you could tell that it was, the person cared a lot, but it was also it was meant to shame J. Scott Campbell and make him feel bad and like really trying to, like, actually, you know what, instead of me trying to interpret what the person meant, I'll instead, if I felt the need to do that, what I would do is that I would have presented that post as, and once again, I'm a 37-year-old dude who's been on the internet since the beginning, so I have way more inference and influence. We're talking about this with 2020 hindsight, so screw whatever I'm about to say. But it's a good idea. But it's a good point. Is that if I were to do that, my post would be like, listen, like, I wanted to go through, and my idea is that I wanted to try and focus on developing my art style. So I wanted to pick up a couple. Examples of accentuated aesthetics that have been very predominant through comics for the last couple years culturally, and I wanted to do my own takes on them. Like, and then you could have done that where you could, instead of pointing it out, like writing it over like it was a classroom thing, you could have put them side by side, being like, here's my interpretation of this. And like you said, if you did it in a draw this in your style capacity, nobody would have cared. But then again, well, then nobody would have cared, like that. So there.
I like that.
Yeah, because, like, well, nobody would have. Yeah, I mean, that's all I got. Because then everyone would be like, oh, okay, cool, neat. But then you had to put that stank on it to be like, oh, he's coming after J. Scott Campbell. Oh, like, how's this gonna work? It's shoot your shot, I guess. But, like, yeah, just be prepared. Like, if you're gonna say some stuff that's gonna tick somebody off, like, on the internet, like, just be prepared for what that's gonna be like.
Comics are fun.
Yeah. And I honestly think at some point in time, hopefully, if there should be a school, or like there needs to be internet comment etiquette, but like for real, like a non-joke version of that. Like that needs to be like an actual thing that you can like take and graduate before you go online. I think, like in our lifetime,
media class.
Yeah, or like or not like social media for sure. Like either an awareness or like some sort of like thing that like goes into like internet culture or something like that, where that like, because I feel like if you did that would like solve so many headaches for people. Or maybe it wouldn't. Maybe I'm just
I also feel like it's not going to matter because it's always changing.
Yeah, exactly. And then and if you're telling someone what to do, well then they're not going to do it. So why bother?
Well, I'm exhausted with all these opinions. Let us know what you think. If you have opinions on the thing, whether it's about D&D or if it's about art and art criticisms, let us know. Drop it in the comments, and then we'll have some fun.
You want to get in fights with us? I'm sure, like, if you got to know us, we'd be pretty cool people. So
you guys want to fight? Just don't bump into me at Ultimate.
I'm open to trying a second edition D&D game. I'll give it a shot.
Actually, what the funny thing is, like, to do a callback, is that I was talking to our good friend Joe about this as well. It was where I was like, I was kicking myself when I did like that one shot for y'all with like my steampunk RPG, and like going back, I was like, man, I'm an idiot. I gave a rogue spells, and Joe was like, yeah, you just made us do third and a half edition D&D, and I was like, oh, that's what I did. Oh, okay, cool. Like, I was like, all right, neat.
It's totally intentional.
Yeah, exactly. But like, yeah, so it's just don't just stop trying to police fun, stop trying to ruin everyone else's fun, stop whatever, just be happy, man.
Just the last year has taught us anything.
Yeah, find your happiness.
Shit can go wrong real quick.
Yeah,
so.
Either and actually, there's a weird, like, another thing that's been popping in my head from our buddy Colin's game is a line that one of my characters said to, like, somebody, like, there was a fire or something, and I looked, like, there was this guy who was trying to beat us up, and I remember I was looking at him and I was like, you're either helping or you're hurting. Make a decision, and that's been in my head a lot lately. Like, either you're helping or you're hurting,
Well, that's probably going to do it.
Yeah.
We've been chatting for a while. Brett, thank you so much for coming on. It has been too long.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a while, and I feel like the time off allowed me to get a little bit more spicy in the opinion department on this episode, at least.
It's true.
But yeah,
it's been a very fun time, just like riding a bike.
Oh yeah.
And Brett, did you have anything coming up? Anything that you wanted to
plug?
To shout out, plug, whatever?
No.
Okay.
No. Sorry. I was saying that mostly for comedic effect, but no, I got nothing big coming on. I'm just doing my day job. I'm working on a few tiny things, but like, I don't know. I got nothing big. I'm just spinning a lot of wheels. I have a couple of projects that maybe will be a thing, maybe in 2022, but right now I'm just enjoying being a person for a little bit. Like, yeah, my 2019 wasn't that great, and then 2020 happened. So like, I'm still recuperating, and I'm hoping to gear up and get some good things going on for next year. So this year I'm just connecting, being a human, hanging out with my friends. So, and and just trying to be a person. That's all.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully
that involves you guys, and thank you so much for allowing me to do that.
Absolutely, dude. Anytime. You know how it goes. Brett, We're gonna end. Thanks again for coming on. This was beautiful, and I hope I get to see you very soon.
Likewise.
Yeah, that's it. I'm done. Hopefully are you guys done? We're done. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's gonna do it. So until next time, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
And I am Brett Kelley.
And this has been episode 431 of Opinions May Vary. Hey everyone, if you liked that episode, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Opinions May Vary, and on Twitter and YouTube at OMV Podcast. You can also find us on Spotify or on our very own website at omvpodcast.com. And if you're looking for merch, we have stickers and pins available over at omvpodcast.bigcartel.com while supplies last. As always, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and we will see you next time.